Okay, so we are live by Marissa. We'll talk about you on the chat, of course.
Yes.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is the very fun, very awesome Books and Booze event. I know you all have been waiting for it. My name is Danielle Dresser. I'm the editorial manager for freshfiction.com. And I'm also one of the resident book club hosts when we can all meet in person at Love Sweet Arrow. So on behalf of Love Sweet Arrow, I'm just so excited to be here with our two fabulous guests, Angelina M. Lopez and Melonie Johnson. Welcome, guys.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you so much.
So I just want to say, when about a month or so ago, when Melonie, when you reached out to me to do this event, and you explained, like, you were throwing around the idea of like books and booze, and we kind of were talking about ourselves like we're the boozy broads. And I was like, this is perfect, because when I do have my book club in person at Love Sweet Arrow, I show up at like 11 o'clock on a Saturday with like mimosas ready to go. And like everyone who walks in is like, do you want a mimosa? Do you want a mimosa? So this is super fun. I'm so excited to get to talk to you guys for a while tonight. So first off, let's have you guys introduce yourselves and what you're drinking for the evening. So I was saying offline before we started, I made a little concoction of Prosecco and tangerine LaCroix and some berries, and that's what I've got going on. So Angelina, you go first.
Yeah, so I had every intention. Danielle started her story when she was telling us what she was drinking with. I had every intention too, and exactly. I said I was going to make this drink. I make this drink all the time, but the reality was I turned in book 3 of the Filthy Rich series today, Serving Sin, which is all I've been doing for like a month. So at like 6, I ran and I showered, which was necessary. And then I was like, oh my God. So I'm just drinking a really nice, cheap Robert Mondavi $8.99 Cabernet, which I really highly recommend, from the grocery store, and it's delicious. But drinking that, and then I've got a little Chateau Saint Michel Chardonnay as refill, because God forbid we do this sober. So yeah.
All right, Melonie, how about you?
Same as Angelina, like I was going to make a fancy cocktail and then the time was running out. So what I've been making all summer is actually, I've been using my, I have one of those NutriBullets, the little blenders.
Oh yeah.
Make like all kinds of healthy smoothies in. So I've been using that to come up with various frozen cocktails. And one of them I like is there's Trader Joe's makes a jalapeno limeade. And so it's really good. So the jalapeno limeade and vodka with ice. And if you don't like it spicy, you can use the regular organic lemonade, or you can, I sometimes mix the two, so it's not quite super spicy, but that's really good frozen boozy lemonade.
Yeah. Vodka is like this secret magic sauce to like all fruity drinks. Like just add some vodka and then it's fun. What I should have done is downstairs, I have melon agua fresca, which is essentially you get a big watermelon and you're so excited and you cut into it and it's mushy, right? Like it's horrible and it's mushy. Take half of it, put it in a blender with a half a cup of sugar and I just think like a cup of water, and blend it all up, and then put that in your pitcher, and it's amazing. If you half it with water or sparkling or a couple shots of vodka, it's amazing watermelon agua fresca that goes great with everything. So while I'm not drinking it because I forgot it was in the fridge, I highly recommend that. Get a mushy watermelon. It does not have to be thrown out.
Yeah. That's awesome. So before we get into our main chat, I want to remind everyone that on the YouTube channel where this is streaming live, there is a chat. So jump in there, tell us if you're having a cocktail, and I'll check in the comments in a little bit, and read off what all of our or everyone who's watching, what they're drinking as well. And then also, if you have any questions for our authors, please put them in the chat. Marissa is monitoring them and she will send them to me as in a text. And I'll also monitor it from time to time. So if you see me looking off to the side, that's why, because I have another monitor over here. So for my first question, I think it's just so fun that both of you have books and booze kind of ingrained in your brand. Like, it's so much fun. it is, we'll talk about this later, but it is definitely a little bit of escapism here and there. So Angelina, I want to start with you because booze is like in your family. It's the family business. So can you please tell us a little bit more about your parents' vineyard?
Yeah, I really love to talk about it because I came to it late in life. My parents bought the vineyard it was just property, but they bought it in Sonoma County in 2009. So I was in my later 30s. Honestly, can't even think of it off the top of my head. But they said, we're going to buy this property and plant a vineyard. And I was like, you're going to do what? That's crazy. They planted it. They wanted to they're in the Russian River Valley, which is a really renowned area to grow wine grapes, and especially Pinot Noir, which is what they grow. Background is in journalism. I was doing digital media. They said, build us a website and do social media for us to connect us to the community. So even though I thought what they were doing was really weird, I needed to get educated in wine and learn about the community and learn about growing. Well, in the process of doing that, and my parents are so, they work so hard and they are so into it that I fell in love with it. It's called Gantz Family Vineyards is our vineyard. And we sell to some of the top winemakers in California, and their passion became my passion, and the way they were accessible about wine and the growing experience became mine. And so in 2015, I was out there for Christmas, and I had come up with the idea for Lush Money, my first book in the Filthy Rich series. At that point, the title was The Billionaire's Prince. And I was just trying to think about what the prince did, what was interesting about him, what was his job. And I was at the vineyard outside, kind of typing up a summary on my phone. And I looked up and I was like, his kingdom grows wine grapes. I mean, like, why the hell not? I have this amazing thing to draw on and this amazing experience to, talk about in the books. And so I really embraced that for him. And it really grounded. What's been interesting about writing the whole Filthy Rich series is it's all about people with vast amounts of wealth or power. They're royalty or they're billionaires or they're CEOs. But what really made it interesting was grounding them in that their billions meant that we were responsible for thousands of people's jobs. Their kingdom meant they were responsible for thousands of people's livelihood. And when you're working at a vineyard, you understand that all of those little plants, you are responsible for. It creates a vast amount of responsibility. So I think it helped to ground my rich people, giving them the dirt, giving them plants and fruit. So anyway, it's also fun just to drink. I don't know that, but there was something really grounding and positive beyond just the fun effects of lots of wine around.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I know. And I totally agree. Like when you think about some of these huge, just very successful businesses, and then how many lives, like when one little thing goes wrong, it affects everyone, not just the people who are running the show, but everyone involved. So, I mean, that is a really important aspect, I think, because like you said, it grounds them. It makes it really real for them too.
Yeah, and the moral consciousness right now of billionaires is kind of like, ooh, who wants to read about that? So I really wanted to make them heroes in my mind. They had to be people who cared about what this meant, what the wealth and responsibility meant, because I couldn't enjoy them. I couldn't write about them if they didn't have that sense, that moral grounding. So, but still fun to drink.
Yeah. So Melonie, you kind of took this, especially when you first got started, and you started a reader group, and it's called the Writing Lush. I am a proud Lush. I belong to this group. It's super fun. But I think the concept of a Lush, especially, it can kind of have a negative connotation. So what inspired you to kind of take it on and reframe the narrative of it?
Yeah, I think there's so many descriptors for what's often considered a female. It's not always women that are luscious, but that's usually the case. That's what they're called. I just think embracing something and making it your own is you see that a lot in culture, where you decide, like, why does this have to be a negative thing? And the actual definition of lush is to like embrace, like indulge, like to embrace an indulgence and to like thoroughly enjoy something. And I don't think there's anything wrong with like thoroughly enjoying something, or thoroughly embracing something that you love. So I just kind of it was all by accident how it happened. I kind of jokingly call it. So I honestly, I don't remember like how it first got rolling, where I think I made some kind of joke about, they talk about, write drunk, edit sober, that kind of situation. And I'm like, write drunk, edit drunker.
Yeah.
Crying.
But just kind of like very tongue in cheek, very and again, like very like just kind of in the sense of enjoyment, and calling myself the writing lush in this sense of like kind of living in the moment and enjoying the party as it's happening, and embracing like you said, your book club. Mm-hmm. The part of book club is drinking. Like, in fact, I would say it's probably 90%, 10%. And I try to make it clear that in my Lush group that it's not just about alcohol, that it's not in any way, Lush is not defined by alcohol alone. It's embracing any sensual pleasure, whether it is chocolate or ice cream or romance novels, or pictures of men with really great beards. Sorry, I saw the picture of Paul Rudd today with the beard, and I'm still a little bit verklempt about it.
No, I think that's really cool, because it really, like when you were talking about kind of the definition of lush and everything that goes along with it, immediately I was like romance novels, like everybody thinks, they kind of always kind of put them down, or don't take them that seriously, where we all know, I'm preaching to the choir here, like we all know how important they are. We know how different they can be from one another, and it's something that we can all indulge in and get together every few days and talk about, like especially right now. It's been so great. One of the positives, I think, of the pandemic so far, we'll talk about kind of how we've all been coping during the pandemic and everything in a few minutes, but all of these virtual events have been just so fun, because I've connected with so many people and different authors, and again, it's bringing people together, and it's a way to get through this crazy time. So yeah. So throughout the chat, I want to tell everyone, I'm going to sprinkle in some like fun drink related questions and book related questions, obviously. But my first one is like, what is your absolute favorite drink? And let's play it fair. Let's do both, like your favorite alcoholic drink and non-alcoholic drink. Like, what would you, if you had to choose something to like drink for the rest of your life, or you could only drink it for, prolonged period of time, what would it be and why?
Bourbon, just because it goes in a lot of stuff. So I can do it lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And it's just phenomenal. It's like fulfilling, and you can dress it down and you can dress it up, and you can drink it neat and on the rocks. And bourbon's is my happy drink. And then non-alcoholic, I have to say, like a guilty pleasure that I'm trying to get away from is Diet Dr. Pepper. Like, how many poisons can you enjoy just ingesting? But it's a guilty pleasure, and I enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah. Melonie, how about you?
So for alcoholic, I would not have said this before this summer, but I have become a big fan of vodka. I don't know what happened. I think it's this summer. Like it's so versatile, and what I'm putting it in different drinks, and there's a Swedish vodka that makes different infusions. So there's one that has ginger and lime in it, which is great for mules.
Yeah.
So I've just been having fun experimenting with that. Before I would have just said wine, but the summer has been the summer of the pandemic has been the summer of vodka.
Yeah, you gotta bring out some extra oomph there for what's going on right now, right?
Yeah, and I've also been trying to cut back in general, just how much, because I'm gonna say during the hardest weeks of the pandemic, I was like, oh, I'm going through quite a few bottles of wine in a week. I think I need to pull it back.
Yeah.
So, kind of figuring out once you pour a glass, it's so easy to pour another glass. So, starting to figure out what can I enjoy? I'm a lush, but I still will like to enjoy in moderation. The vodka was easy to kind of you make a drink, then you're done. Kind of thing. So.
Sure. Totally.
Non-alcoholic, coffee. Coffee is the drink I have to have.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll through our chat a little bit and see what everyone's drinking. So we've got a Michelob Ultra Cactus Lime. Linda, that sounds great.
Cactus
And
lime.
Amaretto and Coke for Charlene.
Nice, I like it.
Brienne has a sparkling peach iced tea from Trader Joe's. That I've had that. That's really good.
And really good vodka.
Yeah, yeah. And then she read, he said, is about to make the switch from iced coffee to wine.
Excellent.
It's about that time, yeah.
And patina, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got a lot. There's a lot going on. And yeah, lots of good chatter. It's very exciting. Cool. Okay. So moving on, and we kind of started talking about this when we were discussing how you both have incorporated, you know, books and wine and booze and everything into your brands. Let's talk about your writing journeys. What's so cool is you both debuted last year in 2019. So congratulations, that's amazing. Can you both tell us about what brought you into romance writing?
You go first, Melonie. Okay. So I've loved romance forever. Like, so actually this summer, again, I was bored, pandemic. So I've been doing I've been calling it the Summer of Sunfire. So I went back and found my entire collection. They were a young adult historical romance series called Sunfire. And they were all these, basically it's like American Girl meets Sweet Valley High. So there's all of these, each book is about a girl. It's like the book's title, it's her name. And it's set in a historical time in America's history. And it's about like her coming of age and finding love and finding the one, and also finding who she is and finding out what she wants to be and all those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And I just loved them. I mean, I ate them up. I was probably, oh gosh, I had to be like 10 when they were first coming out in the 80s. And obviously I love them and never gave them up. I kept my collection. So I've been doing that on my Instagram page. I've been taking photos of all the covers and sharing, you know, what I love best about them or what I remember about them. So I've been into romance since I was little. Mm-hmm. As far as writing is concerned, I've always liked telling stories. I was an English major in college. I'm a theater major, and I think theater is another way of telling stories. Mm-hmm. Very much so, you know, in that way, and developing characters. And so I was a high school teacher. I taught high school English and theater. Nice. And when I had my first baby and decided to kind of pull it back and I stopped teaching full time, mm-hmm. I started to kind of dabble in writing, and that's where it started to kind of slowly take off. I did a NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, and I wrote a paranormal romance. I very much want to go back to that one day. You know, it's the first book, so you kind of are getting your feet wet, but like I've never forgotten those characters. They're waiting their turn. They're kind of getting a little bit antsy, actually, about when I'm going to give them some love again. But yeah, so it just kind of all slowly, you know, fell into place. And it's funny because it's like people who come into your life at the right time, and it's the weirdest thing I was a romance reader before I was a romance writer, so I followed the Smart Bitches Trashy Books website. Mm-hmm. Back when it first started, like when it was first in its inception. Yeah. And I was on there, like, I think my handle, my, you know, name was like Mama Nice, because I was like a mommy blogger. So like my name at the time was connected to that. It feels like a million years ago, that identity. But so I actually became friends with Sarah through following her website, and then when she was in Chicago for an event, we met up for breakfast just to talk. And I think that was when she was actually writing a book for Source Books, or Heathen Bosom, that you were a part of, Danielle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you were with Source Books. It's a small world. It is such a crazy small world. Yeah. But anyway, when I was dropping Sarah back off at the hotel for the conference, and I had no idea what RWA was. Like I tell this story sometimes. I'm like, I thought it was like the Red Hat Society. Like the old ladies that wear the red hats. And anyway. And she explained what it was. And then a woman there came up to Sarah to say hi when I was dropping Sarah off. And I offered to take their picture together and I would email it to her, this woman. And I did that. And then the next, like literally the next week, because I had my own children's theater company at the time. I know I'm like, oh, I scaled it back and I stopped teaching, but then I was doing this other stuff. Anyway, so I walked into it was at the Park District that I was teaching theater classes, and it was that woman was there in the hallway, the one that I took a picture of with Sarah.
Yeah.
And she was there and she was like, hey, you're from, and then we kind of connected, and she told me about Chicago North, which is the romance writers chapter in Chicago.
Yeah.
And she's like, you should come sometime. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, haha, and I kind of put it off, but we kept coming because she was there to take her daughter to dance classes. So she was there every week, and every week I would walk in to teach my class. Every week she was sitting there and she would invite me. And so finally I went, and it snowballed from there. But it was fate, like that weird fate, So yeah.
Yeah, it was meant to be. It was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Angelina, what about you?
I had always was a writer, and it was the first thing I declared I was going to do, and always was going to do it, and got into journalism very, very early. And mostly because I didn't think I could make a living as a fiction writer. I mean, like early, like 5th grade, I decided like, I can't make a living as a fiction writer, so I'll be a journalist. But in 8th grade, I moved to San Francisco. And it was the first time I really dealt with the mean girls, just really mean girls. And even at that age, I knew I can't change them, and I can't change this situation. Yeah. All I can do is bear it. And freshman year, I'll be at a new school. I just have to grin and bear it. And so what I would do at this point, I'd already started stealing Kathleen Woody-Wiss's books from my mom's shelf, and started that like 6th, 7th grade. So in 8th grade, I would go to the local, I can't remember the name, like the mall bookstore. And I would buy, my first book I ever bought myself was the Bettina Cron. I would buy a book, and I would buy a bag of Ruffles, and I would go to my room just in misery with the mean girls.
Yeah.
And I would close the door, and I would eat the bag of chips, and I would read the whole book in one setting, like in 6 hours. And it taught me such an amazing level of self-care. And my mom would come knock on the door, and she'd be like, are you going to come down? And I'd be like, not tonight. Like, I just need, because I can't do anything. And that's what romance novels, and in the process of that, I learned about self-care, and I learned about women seeking their own pleasure, and I learned about women being self-determining, and they were written by women, and these books were generally the whole industry was by women. And in the midst of this, and I felt it was the one thing that could help escape this oppressive level of the mean girls. Mm-hmm. And I learned the incredible value of escapism, the incredible mental health value of pleasure and of escapism, because there's certain things you cannot fix. We are not in control of everything. Right. And sometimes all you can do is bear it and get through it. That time, everything luckily changes into something else. For good and bad, everything changes something else. And that's what romance novels taught me, is the ability to embrace pleasure and embrace beautiful words and again, in this really very positive association for an 8th grade girl about women saying, I seek fulfillment and I seek sexual pleasure. And the men saying, we seek fulfillment for you and we seek sexual pleasure for you as well. And so, I went through high school, very literate and kind of hiding my romance love. And then I got to my mid-20s and I was like, you know what, this is the reason that we are ashamed of this is because we have been taught to be, that we have been taught to be ashamed of this thing. And why is the idea of joy and pleasure and love, why is this something to be ashamed of? These books are so fundamentally important. Mm-hmm. And the industry and the people generally in that industry are so fundamentally important that I really embraced it. And so I started writing really seriously, right after my kids were born, I wrote for 20 years. I was not trying to publish that much, but I was in the Washington Romance Writers of DC. I was active in RWA for years and years and years. And finally, all of that came together and I was ready and the kids were older and I published and it happened and it was awesome. But I'm a huge, defender and champion and have been for 20 years of how valuable this idea of joy and pleasure and the women centricness of it is. Like,
yeah,
I'll get down from my soapbox now.
No, that's so important. And we are going to talk about kind of escapism and fantasy and all of that in a little bit too. So like I mentioned earlier, you both debuted in 2019. Angelina, you told us a little bit earlier about kind of the basis of your series around this like principality wine business. It's amazing. So Melonie, I wanted to give you a chance too to tell us about your series a little bit and kind of the setup for it.
So yeah, mine, I was at a writing retreat with friends and I decided I was gonna, that first paranormal book that I had written, I decided I was gonna set that aside and try something different. And I just kind of just started writing and let whatever happened happen. And a Scot showed up in a kilt in a castle. And I assumed, great, I'm writing time travel. It's paranormal again. But then it turned out not to be.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I wrote that first scene. It was so crystal clear, and that first scene in that book has not changed. Really didn't change much from that first draft to the published book. Like, wow. It's wild. Like, I mean, certain things got tweaked and logistics got fixed or what have you, but the interaction between the hero and heroine and the conversation, I mean, it's almost, it's all the way through. So it was one of those moments, like those gifts where you get like this very real moment between characters and you have something. And that's what happened with Logan and Cassie from Getting Hot with the Scot. And female friendships and the bond between friends is very important to me. So that kind of happened organically. That as the story started to unravel, and I realized, okay, she's a girl. She's on vacation with her friends. That's how she ends up in this castle in Scotland. And they're on this whirlwind vacation that they've been dreaming of forever. When they're in college together, and it's horrible, and they just want to. How are we going to get through this promise that we're going to take this trip together one day. And that just all kind of, and then the girls started to become very real people and develop their personalities. And that kind of led to, each of their own stories. And
That's amazing. Yeah, I have to say, like, I read your books. Well, I was lucky enough to read it early because I had a review copy. But then I also, I read your books. I saw the movie Girls Trip, and all of a sudden it was all girls trips, female friendship, everything has to happen. And so, and it really, last year, it's totally different time, obviously. But last year I went out of my way. I was it was just in my blood at that point. I was I've got to go hang out with my friends or have them over and have them out on the patio in the summer. It was everyone too. Everyone just was game. They were yeah, let's do this. So thank you for that. That was fun.
It's sad. It's so sad right now. But that's why books are good. You can't travel for real right now, so you can travel. Armchair tourism, they call it.
Yeah. No, it's the best.
It really is. And I think, it's so important, like you both have been saying, in books, and right now that's where we get to go on trips and stuff at this point, we live through this descriptions of the settings and it's so much fun to be able to escape for a little bit. So,
and I don't know about Melonie's life, but there's way more hot guys in my pretend world than there is and my husband's hot, don't get me wrong, but I don't have strange men coming and wanting to caress me. So, it's a nice travel.
Well, it's all part of the wish fulfillment,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
The trips and the things there's this element of, it's life, but it's a little bit more sparkly, it's a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So, like I mentioned, you both debuted last year, which to be honest, let's be like perfectly honest, it was like 7 years ago, really. You know, in quarantine time, it was 7 years ago.
At least.
But so what have you learned during this year? And also, what do you guys wish you would have known before you debuted?
I wish. So what I learned is, so I had mentioned I'd been in RWA and WRW for about 20 years. I'd gone to tons of conferences. I'd gone to a ton of conventions. I'd gone to retreats. I had good friends. I was locked in.
Yeah.
The level of misconception about debuting still is true. And I have a phenomenal editor, phenomenal agent who tells me like it is. Like my agent, Sarah Megabo. Still, the level of misconception about debuting as an author and how much money can be made was, I'm still shocked at myself. The level of learning curve. We don't talk enough about the realities of the industry. We don't talk enough about money between writers. And it is incredibly difficult. To anyone who's wondering, it is incredibly difficult to make money as an author right now. It's just, even if you're trad or indie, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of people publishing and the pie is a little bit thinner. So it's incredibly difficult right now to make a full-time living as a writer. And then there's, so it's just listen to what people tell you. Don't think that you're going to be the one person that's going to have a different story. The story is pretty general. The one thing that I wish I had known, I mean, I feel like those are all the same answers. Like I just wish I had fully embrace the information I had. The one thing though that, as I talk to newer aspiring authors, I say, no, understand that you're a business, that you're not an artist. You are, but you're a business. So you have to understand social media. You have to be able to design your own graphics. You have to understand a certain level of marketing and newsletters. Just learn that stuff as you're writing. But the other thing is, regardless of how much money you make or who your publishers, whatever, once you publish, you're in the game. You get to play. Yeah. And that's what everyone's looking for. Once you get to play, then you get to start figuring stuff out. But so it's getting to play that it's valuable. It's wonderful. And I wouldn't change it for the world, as hard as it is. That being said, if there's anything you like to do more than writing, do that. But if writing is a thing that drives you, then go for it.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah, I just want to jump on one little thing. Earlier this summer, it may have even been in like April, but I did like a webinar and it was with Sarah McLean, and it was called like Romance 101. But she said, she echoed something very similar to what you just said about how it's a business. And she was like, you really have to remember what it's like writing that first book, because that's got to be what drives you through it. Because once you write that first book and once you get a deal, it becomes a job.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people kind of forget that eventually it becomes a job and you're creating a product, and that product has expectations and it has goals that it wants to hit. You don't even know about.
Top somewhere, that idea is gone. Let it go that there's a marketing team behind you that's going to be doing all the work that you're not going to do. You are a business, and you have to love the work. If you wake up wanting the work, but if you wake up wanting to make a list, or if you wake up wanting to be popular on Twitter, or if you wake up needing to prove something to some English teacher somewhere, don't do it. If you wake up dying to write these characters, and it's going to fulfill you. The lows are more, there's more lows than highs.
Yeah.
If you're not driven by the work, if you love just waking up every day and embracing these characters and letting them take over your crazy mind for a while, go for it. Other than that, don't do it.
Tough love from Angelina, everyone. Yeah. Okay, Melonie, tell us about where I just lost my place. What you've learned and what you wish you knew before you debuted.
I think that that's such a good point that you were both bringing up about, remembering the passion you had for it, because it does become a job, and it does become very much about the deadlines and meeting and what's next and what's coming down the pipe. And I think for me, part of it was like worse because of the 3 books in 3 months kind of situation that I had last year. So it was compounded. But I wish I would have, more of the kind of like foresight, because like once that third book was out there, like it really took me some time, because like you need to have the next thing in the hopper, like ready to go. Like Angelina was saying, once you're in the game, you get to play. Yes, but you have to have the next card ready to play.
Yeah.
Because it moves so quickly. So it's like as soon as those books are out, it's so what's next? And like you've been living in one world for so long that it's hard to like pull yourself out of that world and then create a whole new world. So for me, that was a bit of a kind of a like almost like culture shock, like going like from one world to another, and finding that joy again, because it definitely there you know, it reached actually that was for me was writing the current book that I just finished and turned in, and it was probably because I was writing it during a pandemic, but that was where it became a job. Like it became, I have to finish this book. I have to get it done. I don't, you know, and it became, and it was, I had to like fall back in love with the characters and fall back in love with writing. So I think something that I wish I had known was the level of foresight you need. Like that it's not, and I knew like once I got the book deal, it wasn't all over. I knew that the work began then. I just didn't, it goes farther than that. It's like once the books are turned in, you've already got to be thinking about that next book, you know? So that was for me, was more foresight and planning and thinking those kinds of things through. I think what was surprising for me was, so this is completely an honest admission, was dealing with professional jealousy. Like, I'm just gonna be fully honest. That was a hard thing for me to kind of figure out about myself, because that was like in my other career as a teacher and even in theater as an actress, I understood the world of theater as the parts you get, you know, a director picks someone because of the image they have in their mind. So I didn't really always, there wasn't a lot of sour grapes for me if I didn't get a part or whatnot. But with writing and with publishing and seeing, you know, just seeing certain books getting more love or seeing certain things getting more attention, like I was surprised at that level of professional jealousy. So just learning how to like turn that off and channel that energy into what I could do took a bit of work. And we don't talk about this stuff, you know, everything smiles and woohoo on social media. And you know, and sometimes the people that you're looking at with a bit of jealousy are dealing with their own stuff.
They always are. Always, yeah.
So you don't know what's going on behind that as well. And so just kind of like just centering it back to the work. Like I'm supposed to start my next book, but last night I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna write something for fun. Like I'm just gonna turn off. I think I said I let my muse off the leash. Is how I described it. And I got a great idea that, you know, but the thing is, like, immediately I'm like, I have to fight how can I turn this into something to pitch for publication? I'm like, no, I'm going to protect this for right now and see what happens with it. So foresight and planning is what I wish I had known. And then what I learned is dealing with, you know, that you're not going to get like all of the,
It's so funny because when I was interviewing my agent, I asked, what's the one thing you wished authors would do differently? And she said, I wish authors would just focus on their own journey and not worry about others' journeys.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, because I was the same way, Melanie. I just never had that. That just was not my bag in every other place in my life. And I think about that all the time now, because all the time I'm struggling with that. You know, you see somebody getting way more love, or they're getting way more promotion, or all of these things. And it is really difficult. And it is interesting how it's singular. It's not a personality trait. It's singular to this profession. I don't know if it's because of the hours we put into these books, you know, and the level of love and whatever, but it's a real thing, and it isn't talked about. And how do you focus on your own journey? And what Melanie's doing, which is listening to what her particular story and listening to what she has to say and listening to what value, you know, that her muse is telling her off the leash. Those are the stories that you know, break barriers. Those are the stories that get attention because they're not trying to follow a market. They're not trying to follow professional jealousy. Well, if I write a rom-com, then everyone will love it, you know, or I write a whatever it is, you know. Those are the stories that really explode. But man, it's hard. It's hard. It takes bravery, and it's hard to be that brave all the time. So I can't wait. I want to read it. I don't care if nobody else does, Melonie.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah. So we talked about some kind of heavy stuff there, you two. So let's put in a fun question. What? Yeah, right. What is one alcohol you will never touch ever again? And if you want to tell us why, you may.
It should be tequila. I love it. And then I've had 2 really bad, like just evenings, which I'm not going to get into, but they've been tequila driven. And so I just have like 1 tequila. I don't know. Tequilas can be evil. And that's, yeah, no, but you're going to have to get to know me a lot better before we talk about those tequila stories.
Melonie, what about you?
So I'm a lightweight. So when you said your drink of choice was bourbon, I was like, whew. I can't handle the really hard stuff. So I haven't like worked my way up to the really grown up drinks.
We'll practice together.
Like the girls in my book, they're at a whiskey tasting. I would be the one that was like, like the fumes would be enough to put me over. But yeah, so I think like college was like a blur of Boone's Farm. So, even I think just the smell of Boone's Farm might.
Oh God. That's awful. That's awful. No.
A lot of Boone's Farm. Yeah, it's like, you know, yeah, I'm not much hard liquor. Like I can't handle it. Like I remember one New Year's Eve party, I did a shot of Goldschlagers.
Oh God.
Oh, yeah, no.
And the last thing I remember is like I was on my knees and I was holding my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, like his belt loops. Like I don't know what happened. I went it was like, I'm like, all right, well, not doing that again. So.
Yeah.
That has to be in a book, that where you're just holding somebody. Oh, that's got to go in a book.
That's amazing. Yeah, totally. Total inspiration right there. So let's move on and talk a little bit about escapist fantasies or wish fulfillment or adult fairy tales, like kind of all of that wrapped in one, which I think both of your books kind of inhabit really well. And, you know, why are, you know, these certain aspects of like traveling to amazing places, they're really fun. I think both of your books have elements of humor in them. Of course, very sexy times. Why are these things important to your books, and why do you think readers grasp onto them?
Do you want to go first, Melonie, or you want me to go first?
I mean, you can go. Yeah, I think about your books, and you have the prince, the Spanish prince.
You know, I've always enjoyed romance because of its. I mean, obviously, I mentioned this. I enjoyed romance because of its escapism. That's what I wanted to read. That's what I wanted to know. And this idea of, I mean, just first of all, again, I really attach that to a certain level of self-care, this complete, absolute wish fulfillment, this complete, absolute, like, relaxation, mental relaxation. That being said, I write super angsty books, and I write books with like really, really black moments, and you know, things are hearts are dashed everywhere, you know. So but that's about telling that at the end of the day, while we are a genre, we are a pop fiction genre, and so it's still really important to do a genre fiction to give this full story about, you know, love and you know, black moments and conflict, and you know, just creating this sweeping experience that somebody can really embrace. That's what I find really valuable, because that's where I found value in romance novels. It's also the idea, these two women started this podcast called The Thirst Aid Kit.
Yes.
And, yeah.
So good.
But essentially they talked about, the whole thing was about why a certain actor was hot. You know, I mean, it really was. And actresses, they talk about actresses too, but their whole point was embracing and legitimizing the feminine gaze. The idea that the way women experience things, the way they enjoy things, have the same literate value as the way we've been taught that men enjoy them. The way we've been taught that men enjoy them is through our literature, and it is through our culture, and it is through our movies and our art so much of the time, because so much of the time they are the creators. So they've set this foundation. The way women enjoy things is a different way, and it is this feminine gaze. It is with this thirst, you know, and it is with this idea of sensual pleasure. And we enjoy a different thing. And what this podcast does, Thirst Aid podcast, is really talk about it in a literate, intellectual way. And so that's what's important to me. Let's talk about pleasure and feminine sensuality, whether it's, you know, liquor, whether it's wine, whether it's clothes, whether it's the hot guy's chest. Let's value it in the same way, because we have been the creators, but we haven't been the impetus. We haven't been the people that people have been looking to. So let's value that as a different way of telling, but no less legitimate. And so that's the stories I tell. And I don't think my stories are not inherently, I mean, a lot of times people are like, they're super bonkers. And they are, but it's, again, that escapism is what I value. I am not the person that wants to read about my next door neighbor inherently. You know, if it's my next door neighbor, I want their lives to be 15 and I want them to be best friends with a movie star, just because that's what brings me that kind of comfort. So it's taking the feminine gaze and valuing it, and then putting it in a place where I find a certain level of self-care, because I like fantasies. I like fairy tales.
Yeah. I want to say real quickly, Thirst Aid Kit, I don't know if it's the most recent episode. It may have been like one or two before, but they did an episode on romance novels.
They did.
And it's unbelievable. It's so good. And it's hosted by two Black women, Nicole Perkins and Bim Adewunmi. And
Bim won an award with RWA last year, which was, I got to meet her. I was fangirling really, really embarrassingly.
Yeah. So definitely check out, everyone who's watching, definitely check out Thirst Aid Kit. It's so good. Okay, Melonie, same question. What was the question? No, I'm kidding.
I know, I'm sorry. I talked and I'm like, shut up. Oh my God.
No, we're talking about wish fulfillment and the fairy tale aspect of romance and escapism. And I think the escapism is built in. Like you're reading this book to escape, to live in someone else's world for a little while and let them make all the decisions, and you just get to go along for the ride. So, you know, escapism is built in. And then with the wish fulfillment, like it kind of becomes like, why not? Like, why not have, and even having like a group of girlfriends that are just so amazing can be a sense of wish fulfillment. Like I've had people, you know, reach out to me and talk about how of everything in the book, it was that friendship that they long for, that they were escaping into. But why not have a hot, you know, Scottish guy who will wear a kilt for you when you ask? Why not have a contemporary 21st century Duke? You know, so, and then even the third book, it was funny because in Once Upon a Bad Boy is the third book in the series, and that title came way like at the end. Like it was originally like Dared by the Bad Boy. It was other things before that. But there was an aspect of it, like when they were kids, because it's like a childhood sweetheart, second chance romance situation. And when they were kids, the heroine, when she first meets the hero, she's convinced he's fae, like he's a fairy, like he's from the fairy world. because when she comes across him. And so there's like this element of the supernatural and of fairies and of the stories her grandfather told her about fairies and things like that, kind of woven through. And so when they changed the title to Once Upon, I was like, oh, it kind of fits, it all kind of fits together. And even the fact that they come back together and find each other, that in itself is a fairy tale, is wish fulfillment, like the one that got away coming back and those kinds of things. So
yeah.
And the book I'm currently writing is taken like to the next level, because the book is about a romantic comedy resort where people go to live out their rom-com fantasies.
Oh my God, that's so fantastic.
I
love that.
Yeah. I cannot wait, Melonie. It's going to be so great.
Oh my God.
So wish fulfillment to like the max.
That is awesome.
I think something that you both have brought up, especially when we're talking about kind of fairy tales and escapism, and then specifically like talking about First Aid Kit and like the entertainment business, something I remember before I worked for Fresh Fiction, I worked for Source Books. And, so I was a publicist at a publisher. I worked specifically on romance. But I don't remember who it was, but it was like really early. So this is literally like 10 or 11 years ago. But in like a sales meeting, someone made the point that like publishing is a part of the entertainment industry. And even though we're publishing books, and it was around that time when Source Books started their Casablanca fiction imprint, and it was really, we had to kind of change our mind frame and how we publicized books, because there was definitely a bigger factor of entertainment value when it comes to romance. And I think that in the end, whether it's heart-wrenching, trying to get people to that happy ever after, or it is very funny and it's a rom-com and it's like this madcap story, in the end, people just want to be entertained. And I think, this is rung throughout this entire conversation, but people right now, and I've been watching it in the chat, people have been talking about how they need these books to get through this really hard time. It's hard for everyone. I mean, I know I don't have to tell anyone, everyone is going through something right now, no matter where you are in regards to COVID and everything like that. So I think on behalf of all readers, thank you guys for writing your books. It's so wonderful. So we've had a few questions come in. So I thought before I do like my fun game, we could go through these few questions. So Melonie, since you were kind of talking about your new series, there was a question specifically for you that says, when are we going to know about the other women in the Sometimes in Love series? I know. I mean, and I know kind of the answer to this question. So, but this person said, my wallet is ready to be opened. Is there anything you can tell us about it?
Yeah, so this is the tricky thing with publishing, is that sometimes things are outside of your control. So the one thing that was in my control from the beginning, and when I first signed with my agent, with the Sometimes in Love books, it was, those 5 friends.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, you can't pitch, as a debut author, you can't pitch a 5-book series. Like, It's not going to happen. And I'm like, I'm okay if for some reason we don't get them all out of the gate at once, but I am not giving up any of these girls. Like, it's just not happening. Like, and I told this to her on like our phone call before she signed with me. So at that moment, she could be like, well, I'm leaving this crazy bit, this. Like she could have been like, yeah, no, she's too nuts for me or whatever. But what she told me later was my dedication to my characters was one of the things that she loved so much and why she really wanted to sign me. So, and that, that played in my favor, because when the 5 books were, and I did pitch with all 5 books, the editor who I ended up signing with, she loved the characters and loved the stories, but she ended up wanting to move things around a little bit. And so she asked me if I could move. So Sadie's book was originally supposed to be book 5. And so it became book 3. She really loved the second chance romance. She loved that second chance romance element. So we bumped her book up. And if I had gone with my original plan, it would have been Cassie's book 1, Bonnie's book 2, and Delaney's book was going to be book 3.
Okay.
And so she would have never even seen Sadie's book. if I had gone with just the 3. So I'm glad I did that. But to answer the question, I have Anna's story and Delaney's story in my head. That I know exactly who they meet and how their stories happen. Delaney falls for a firefighter, and she has a thing against men in uniform, so it's going to be interesting. And Anna meets her match. So I know their stories. They're just kind of shelved right now while I'm working on this other thing. St. Martin's, my publisher, really wanted to move me to trade because that's where contemporary romance is currently selling. So moving to trade meant new series, new concept, and it was very hard to like pull myself away from those characters in that world. But they're waiting for me, and whether that means that I own the right to continue the series on my own as I wish. I just need that time to do that, and I know very much how I want to do that. If you're hungry for a little bit of Sometimes in Love, just want to pre-order today. So from book 1, the kind of office bad girl that Cassie got into it with, her name is Tiffany. She is starring in a novella I wrote, a holiday novella called Cold Cocked by St. Nick. And it's part of an anthology called the Jingle Balls Anthology. And it's a charity anthology to raise money for the Testicular Cancer Awareness Fund.
Awesome.
And Jingle Balls.
That's amazing.
So she is a grump. She hates Christmas. She even says the only thing she hates more than Christmas is babies. Like Tiffany is so if you're into like the grumpy one is soft for the sunshine one, this is for you. So she's a grump who ends up falling for a singer in a male a cappella group who looks like he just walked off of one of the early 2000 boy bands. So that's that just came out today, or just went on pre-sale today, Jingle Ball. So if you'd like a little bit of Sometimes in Love, you could get you can see another set of Tiffany, which I thought was fun because she's kind of like the nasty girl in the heroine story in book 1, and we get to see her other side.
I love that.
I love that too. Okay, here's another question for both of you. What's the process for choosing a title? Any funny stories or titles you haven't been able to use? So, Angelina, how about you start?
The first book, the publisher came up with Lush Money, but I had come up with the idea of Billionaire's Prince because I had actually been looking through books on my phone, just scrolling through books, and I saw one called what I thought said The Billionaire's Prince. And I thought, that's interesting. What is that about? That must be a male story. And I realized very quickly that I assumed that the billionaire had to be a man. And kind of as a lifelong feminist, I was horrified at myself and immediately knew I needed to write a story about a female billionaire and essentially saving a prince. And so that launched this whole Filthy Rich Stories about powerful, wealthy women who get what they want because they've earned it. Their wealth is something that they've earned themselves. And so that kind of launched, everything this last 5 years for me. But all of my titles have come from my publisher, and I've loved everyone. Serving Sin, I wasn't quite sure about right away because I was afraid it was a little too erotic. But I was convinced, and my heroine's name's Zenobia. She's not a big fan of her name. She's an engineer. She's not romantic, and she's like, just call me Sen. She tells everyone to call me Sen. When you're saying it, and it's kind of a more of a Spanish accent, it's more like a Sen. Mm-hmm. But her Roman, her hero, he hears it as Sin, and he's like, I'm not going to call you that. I'm never, ever, ever going to say that. And so it launched Serving Sin, which now I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Melonie, do you have any funny title stories?
So yeah, when I first wrote the books, they all started with, because the 5 books that I had in my head, they were all Sometimes books. The first book was Sometimes You Kiss a Sexy Scot. The second book was Sometimes You Love a Dashing Duke. Like, they're all those kinds of titles. And they actually stayed that way. I think when I got like, they give you, sometimes a publisher will give like a bound copy of the uncorrected proof. And even at that point, it was still Sometimes You Kiss a Sexy Scot. It hadn't changed yet. And then what happens is there are so many hoops and levels that you don't know about until you get into the publishing world. So like what you and your editor talk about is one thing, and then it goes to the whole team of editors, and then it goes to the marketing team and the sales team. And at any point along the line, somebody, usually in sales, will be like, yeah, it's not gonna sell. We want to change it. So we kept Sometimes. That's how it became the Sometimes in Love series, because all those books started with the Sometimes title. And then I feel like the Scott one, so that was actually a story I didn't realize until when I met my publisher for the first time, like at an RWA thing. And so Sometimes, so Getting Hot with the Scott kind of came around. They were having a sales team meeting, and they were throwing out like all kinds of things that rhyme with Scott, like what they could come up with. And like there was like one guy, I think, at the table, and he's like, Getting Hot with the Scott, and like everyone like flipped out and like loved it, and he was so embarrassed. So I did not know that that's how that happened. But yeah, so that's and then like Once Upon a Bad Boy, for like you, Angelina, with your last book, like when they first told me it, I was kind of like, what? Like it really took me a moment to warm up to it. But you have to trust that they know what they're doing, and trust that there's so many reasons behind a title being chosen that you can't understand. Like, why are there so many books with Duke in it? Because people will buy a book based on the word Duke.
Yeah.
But so far, my next book, Too Good to Be Real, is the title I came up with on my own, and it hasn't changed. So
yeah, right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna switch gears. If you guys are okay, I have the okay. We can go over an hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna remind everyone, if you do come up with questions at any time, always put them in the chat. Go for it. So now I want to move on to my fun game, and it's just like a fire question situation. So we're gonna go in order, like we'll go one after the other. And I'm going to ask you the one question, you both answer it. So I'll have Angelina go first, and then Melonie. So first one, which of your characters do you want to go bar hopping with, and why?
Oh God, all of them? Aish, he's a rock star. He'd be crazy. He'd do crazy, horrible, awesome, fun things. Yeah, I got to go with Aish. Like he's a rock star. He's going to do crazy shit and get us into trouble. That would be awesome.
Okay, Melonie?
Oh, I'd want to go with Logan, because he brings the party with him.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so I think, Melonie, you kind of talked about this, but what was the first romance you read or remember reading? So
as far as the Sunfire series, those were the YA romances, but the first like adult romance, I remember, it's Joanna Lindsay, and it was the one where they have sex on the back of a horse.
I remember
it's like Tender Rogue, or no, Savage Thunder.
Okay.
And it's so on PC, because it's Native American and an indigenous man, and then the Duchess, I think, widowed, of course. But I was babysitting. I was like 12 years old, and the kids had gone to sleep, and I saw the book sitting there, and I was like,
That's amazing.
Mine was Catherine Wood-Lewis's A Rose in Winter.
Yeah.
Christopher Seaton, who plays the dashing rogue, as well as the brother with the mask and God, I still love that book. There's so much of it that I can like remember. And Irene Fleming, I mean, all of that. Like, I can't remember most books' name. Like, I loved him, and I want to marry him.
Yeah.
Still don't care.
Okay, next question. What's your favorite beverage to have while reading a great book?
Oh my God. Wine.
Yeah.
Wine.
Yeah. Yes, I'm sitting outside and relaxing, a glass of wine.
Yeah.
I love it. What is your favorite romance trope to read, and what is your favorite to write?
God, I go, Melanie.
I love, this is tricky for me because I like enemies to lovers because I love the banter.
Mhm.
But there has to be a level of affection in it, which I think is what Sally Thorne does so well in The Hating Game.
Mhm.
Is, it's like, yeah, it's all about the banter for me. I love reading the banter. I also love writing banter. Dialogue is like my favorite, so writing banter. But I think my favorite to write, which I don't think I haven't written too much yet, which is why the off my leash stuff is is fish out of water. I love writing fish out of water
Mhm.
kind of thing. So
It's so funny talking about tropes because I feel like I'm losing the light. Like I was using the outside light, so excuse me about that. I'm gonna need to get a light.
slowly fading into.
I know. Good night. But reading for I'm 46. I've been reading since I was 12. So reading for 36 years. Tropes is I feel like it's a relatively new word. And when we were buying and we were picking up books, it wasn't really about that. And books were always about two very opposite people finding this middle ground together. And so it's really hard for me to think in terms of tropes, even though I write with them intensely. So in terms of what I read, it's like, God, just give me a good story and give me two people that really have to go through a lot to be together,
Yeah.
make it worthwhile. I want it to be, going back to escapism. I want to really go through the journey of falling in love. And regardless whether it's, some crazy pirate adventure or two competing cupcake store owners, really put me through the ringer with these two people, because that's where all the good tension is. That's where all that good stuff is. It's not something I would want to recreate in a real world relationship with people I love. I wouldn't want my friends to go through it, but I want my characters to go through it because I'm reading it for entertainment's sake. In terms of what I like to write, it's definitely enemies to lovers for that exact same reason. I really want to put two people, I'm writing genre fiction. I really want to put two people through the ringer and create real escapism for readers. Again, what I do to people in my books is not something I'd want to ever do to anyone in real life or them be exposed to, but I want to create all that sexual tension. I want to create that emotional tension and the emotional fulfillment of people really getting over themselves to be with another person and finding their innate selves. I just think I just love it. So yeah, enemies to lovers. I'm going to go turn on the light if we're going to do much more.
Yeah, wait. No problem.
Okay.
Yay, we can see you. Awesome. Okay, and then my final rapid fire question is, will you give us, and this probably won't be rapid fire because I feel like this is the question we end up talking about the most during all of these events but will you give us a book recommendation or two that you have read recently that you really loved?
Okay, so I always have more than one book going at a time.
Yeah.
So I have a physical book I'm currently reading is The Boyfriend Project by Farah Rashon. And if I said that wrong, I'm sorry. I always just call her Farah. So, but The Boyfriend Project, and it's strong female friendships. And so I'm really enjoying that. That's the book that I'm reading physically, so I read it like a little bit at a time. Mm-hmm. And then I always have an audiobook going. And the one that I'm currently reading right now is Don't You Forget About Me by Mary McFarlane. And I love it. The audio, if you're going to read that book, read the audio. The narrator is amazing. She's British, but she nails the Irish accent of the hero. Right. And the way the book is written, it's so conversational that having it narrated really kind of gets you into that space. So really like them both. And then I cannot not say You Had Me at Ola by Alexis Daria. Alexis is a good friend, and I'm so excited for this book. And I've like read a little bit and put it aside and read a little bit more because we were drafting together. So we were kind of texting each other at night, and she'd tell me, what she's working on. And I know there's a mirror sex scene in that book, and I can't wait to get to the mirror sex.
The mirror sex scene is awesome. I gave a review for Alexis's book, and it was really, it's phenomenal. And she does a great job of, she's telenovela. So it's this crazy over the top, could be this crazy over the top scenario. And she really grounds it with the real work of people falling in love. And I really, I really enjoyed that about her book. I have a horrible time though, that I really have a hard time reading while I'm writing. And I've been doing nothing but writing for the last year and a half. And I just completely admire writers who can read while they're writing, because I just, those voices get in my head, those storylines get in my head. So I am one of those bad writers who am not able to read a lot. I just finally opened up. I loved Kiss Quotient so much by Helen Wong, and I just opened up The Bride Test, and the first chapter was the intro, I don't even think it's a chapter. The first was such an astonishing opening, and it was so emotional for a guy who doesn't think he's emotional, that's his whole issue. And it was so spare. The writing was so spare, and it was so tight. And I'm really, really looking forward to getting that book. I was just blown away. She's doing things in romance that I aspire to do. I mean, just this really clear sense of who her audience is, and who her characters, and what her writing is. Her writing is so unique, and it kind of kills me. And I'm glad I'm done with that 3-book series so I can read it, because if I was trying to read it while I was writing, I would be like, just stop writing now, just walk away, because you can't do that. So that book is astonishing. What? What'd you say?
No comparing.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I can't, that's why, I can't, I'm like, it's hard for me to read while I'm writing, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys. I hope everyone added all of those to their TBRs, because those are great recommendations. So we have one more question from the audience, and is, if you had to live in any location you have written about, which place would you pick?
I just finished the 3-book series, and it was all in this pretend kingdom in northern Spain called the Monte del Villarreal. And the pretend kingdom is in this valley, or this bowl, this plateau amongst these mountains, where they get a lot of sun, and the sun allows them to grow wine grapes. And it's this little village, and it's this little kingdom. And if I could go there, and I lived in Santiago de Compostela, Spain for a semester in school. And a lot of that kind of very medieval Spanish culture is what informed this book. But God, if I could go there, I would go there in a second. I've been a mess. I wrote the epilogue for the whole series. I've just been a mess since Sunday. It's really hard to say goodbye to these people. I loved them, and it's an experience of saying goodbye to them. So yes, I would live there in a second. I want to go.
All right, Melonie, what about you?
Yeah, well, Spain is on I haven't been to Spain yet, but I do want to go one day. That's on my list once we can travel again.
Yeah, no doubt.
If I had to pick one place to live, it would definitely, it's hard to choose because there's so many great locations. I would go to the lake house that in Smitten by the Brit that Theo takes Bonnie to. It's in Little Lake Country in England, and it's a family cottage. And by cottage, it's still very nice estate. That's just tucked away in the hills, and it's just beautiful. And I would be there, and I could write my books and look at the countryside.
Yeah. So actually, okay, I'm going to say something, because I hope this person's probably like, why haven't you asked my question? This was actually like the first question, but I knew I would ask you guys about what books you would recommend that you had recently read. But one of the very first questions that came in was, what have you been watching and or reading? So and I think we could tack this on to what have you been doing during the pandemic that has kind of kept you sane? Because I think we do turn to TV and books and music even. So what have you been doing to kind of fill your time?
My go-to it's not guilty pleasure. My go-to pleasure is this Supernatural series. I find it very, very gratifying. It hits all my pleasure zones between the beautiful men and the crazy storylines, and it's supernatural, and it's great escapism, and it's an apocalypse that, like, it's an apocalypse that they conquer. And so that definitely, I have always been a person during really, really times of crisis in my life, I turned to pulp culture. So after 9/11, I went into Star Trek Enterprise. No, I went into, Star Trek Next Gen and Lord of the Rings. That became my thing after 9/11. And then after my father died, I got into Bones really weird, that's a weird too. But yeah, Supernatural has been my go-to happy place. And then the star Jensen Ackles was the inspiration for Roman Shepherd, my hero in book 3. So that's a nice place to live mentally.
Yeah. So I've been as a family, we've done a lot of puzzles. I've been going for a lot of long walks and listening to audiobooks while doing that. So I've been going through books a little faster because my walks are getting longer and longer. Show-wise, so we finally, because I didn't want to watch it until I finished the book I was currently working on. So my husband and I just now finally watched season 3 of Stranger Things. Like, we just watched it. We just finished it on Monday, because we I say binge, we watch 2 episodes a night. But like I watch a lot of Netflix while I'm doing laundry, so I've worked through quite a few different series. I just started, based on a recommendation from a friend, Kim's Convenience.
Yeah, I've heard that's good.
Yeah, on Netflix, so that's fun. But yeah, so just kind of, there's so many great rom-coms that are popping up on Netflix. I've been kind of, they're more like teenage ones, but I've been watching them. Yeah. I just watched, I think it was called Work It, which is it's just a bunch of dance montages put together.
Yeah, I think I saw the trailer for that, and I was like, what is this? How can I know what it is?
Because it's like the actors are all appearing in all of these different Netflix rom-coms. Like, he was just in To All the Boys I Loved Before Part 2. And
yeah. That is awesome. Okay, so I think we got through all of the audience questions.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Yeah,
all the people out there who are out there and drinking with us. I have a little giveaway, so I'll have to figure out how to make that work. But I've got some cute drinking glasses and a copy of Angelina's book, a print copy. So I know it's the old cover, but somehow I have 2 of them, so I'm going to give one away.
Awesome! Oh, fantastic! Yeah. Thank you.
Fun. Yeah, we'll figure something, maybe based on the comments, or we'll figure something out, and we'll talk to Marissa about how we can contact people. Yeah. So before we officially sign off, I wanted to ask, well, you both have told us what you have coming next, so we don't have to do that. We've covered it. But can you tell us where we can follow you online?
Sure. My website is AngelinaMLopez.com. It's kind of a good dissemination point for everything. You can sign up for my newsletter, get free bonus reads. On Twitter, I'm at Angelina M Low. Also on Instagram at Angelina M Low, and Facebook, Angelina M Lopez Writer. So the main places I live.
You can find me pretty much all the places: Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, my website, with Melonie Johnson, spelled my way with the O. I feel so bad. There is a woman who is a casino owner, or like the head of a casino, who has the same spelling as my name, and she must be so sick, because I own everything with the Melonie Johnson.
Yeah.
So it's funny because we have Google Alerts set up for your name as an author. You want to know if stuff's popping in, and lately with COVID and casinos, her name is popping up. But yeah, Melonie Johnson, if you do a search for that, you'll find me everywhere. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so thank you both so very much. This was so fun. I think we need to do this again when you both have new books out.
I agree. Danielle, thank you so much. You did such a phenomenal job of keeping us on track.
Wonderful having you.
Yeah, this is so fun. And so before I end the stream, I just want to remind everyone to go to lovesweetarrow.com.
Yes.
And definitely you can buy Angelina and Melonie's books. You can buy other books. They can get you a book, even if it's not listed on their website. They're amazing. Also, tomorrow is Bookstore Romance Day. I feel like we kind of kicked off Bookstore Romance Day.
It was by accident, yeah.
Because tomorrow and Sunday, there are so many events going on. You can head to Bookstore Romance Day. I don't know if it's .com or .org, but if you Google it, you'll get to the place. Linda, who was in the chat, but I believe she had to leave. And I think earlier in the chat, she has been putting together a romance virtual event calendar that she has shared all over the place. So just kind of be on the lookout for that. And that's for anything, not just tomorrow, but tomorrow is jam-packed. Love Sweet Arrow has 2 events, one at 3 Central and one at 5 Central. They're amazing. You can go to their website there to find out the specifics. So again, thank you guys so much. This was so fun. Readers and watchers, thank you for watching and listening. So hopefully we will all get together again soon.
Yes, thank you everyone for being here.
All right, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.